Hi there, this is Solitary Ronan from Solitary Ronan Films, and welcome to the letter Y, my alphabet of favourite film series, which we are only one letter away from finishing the whole thing. Thanks to everybody who has contributed their lists. It's been one of the highlights of my YouTube channel so far. So the letter Y, I thought there might be more, but there's not actually that many. But I do feel, as usual, I've probably forgotten a whole swathe of films beginning with the letter Y. So please do leave your comments and your lists in the comments below of what I've forgotten and which Y letter films I should watch and why. So this shouldn't take too long, hopefully. So we'll start with Your Vice is a Locked Room and Only I Have the Key, which is one of the greatest titles in cinema history. This is a great Arrow release with reversible art. It is a wonderful title. It's essentially Sergio Martino's version of The Black Cat. Starring Enwyd Fyneg, which isn't the way you pronounce her name, but I'm going with it anyway. It's just a wonderful little giallo. It's got a twist in the tail, obviously, if you know the story of The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe. And it's just a lot of fun. And a great soundtrack, as most of these Italian films do have. Next is another Arrow release. It's Yakuza Law, which is a really interesting, it's not really a portmanteau film, but it's pretty much shows you 3 eras of Japan and the effect of gangsters or Yakuza in it. So it's the Edo period, the Meiji period, and up to date, in the 60s. Because this was made late 60s by Teruo Ishii, who's obviously a director that Arrow have taken a shine to because they've released Blind Woman's Curse and The Horrors of Malformed Men. I'm sure there's another one that escapes me. A really nice film. It is an 18 because it does have a bit of the old ultra violence, but it's a really nice little film. One that I would recommend you pick up if you haven't already. Next is one of the premium collection, the Yakuza from 1974. This is directed by Sidney Pollack, and it might surprise you that he can actually direct a really good film. I'm being cynical, of course. This is one of Robert Mitchum's essential 1970s performances, along with The Friends of Eddie Coyle. Strangely enough, it was written by Paul Schrader and Robert Towne, so maybe that's why it's so good. It's a quintessential 70s film, and if you watch my channel you'll know what that means. It's gloriously downbeat and depressing. It's just awesome. It's pretty much about an American, strangely enough, played by Robert Mitchum, who goes back to Japan for a favour to an old friend that he met during the war. But it's got a bit of Lone Star about it, as far as it's pretty much the events of the past are having an effect on the events of the present. It's also a nice kind of metaphor for America in the Pacific, and what they did to Japan, because pretty much Robert Mitchum goes through the film pretty much ruining everybody's lives, not intentionally, just by his actions. People that he actually like die. Secrets are kind of discovered that just make the whole thing wonderfully depressing and downbeat. It stars Takakura Ken, Brian Keith. Again, it really surprised me. I mean, I'd seen it years ago, but seeing it again on Blu-ray, it really does surprise you how good it is. And Sidney Pollack is actually using like the camera, and there's wonderful action sequences. It's really an impressive film, and again, it's one of those films that I saw a long time ago, but then seeing it again in its Blu-ray presentation, it's just really good. And Mitchum again has that world-weary, honest, I'm not an actor, I'm just reading the lines, but he's absolutely stunning in it. And again, through no fault of his own, he pretty much just ruins everybody's life. It's a wonderful film. From the sublime to the ridiculous, it's Yatter Man by Takashi Miike. This won't make it on my final list of my favourite films, or the greatest films of all time, but it's one of those Takashi Miike films that you kind of just have to see. It's actually on Eureka's kind of standard label, not Masters of Cinema. It's based on an anime from the 70s, so it's kind of aimed at kids, even though it's a 15 certificate. The villains have a ship which has two giant breasts that fire rockets from them. The villainess, Doronjo, is kind of in S&M bondage gear for most of the film. And the villains, it's worth seeing. It's not one of Takashi Miike's best films, but I just thought I'd use this as an excuse to talk about it. But the villains do have an absolutely cracking song during the film. I mean, the songs in it, there's bizarre action. Obviously, it's based in a 70s anime, so you can kind of tell what kind of film it's going to be like. But the villains have just a wonderful song. It's so good and so much fun. I think you can probably actually find the song on YouTube. It's just a load of fun. Next is Yellow Sky, which is a lovely little western with Gregory Peck and Richard Widmark. It's pretty much about a bunch of bank robbers who cross this desert and are absolutely parched, a bit like me, and come across this old guy and his granddaughter who are out in the middle of nowhere, and they find out that they are defending a mine which may or may not have gold in it. And Gregory Peck's the leader of the gang, Richard Widmark's his lieutenant. They have differing opinions of what they should do with the grandfather and the daughter, and how they should collect the gold if there's gold there. Directed by William Wellman, and starring Anne Baxter as the spirited young lady. It's just a beautiful little western. There's not much to it, but again, some of the greatest westerns, there's not much to them. But Gregory Peck's fantastic. Richard Widmark, again, is one of those kind of grinning, slimy villains that he kind of did in the 50s. It's just a really nice little film. This is kind of a bare bones Blu-ray release, but it looks really good. and it's a great wee film. Next up is Yellow Sea. This is not a nice little film. This is directed by Na Hong Jin. Again, I apologise for the butchering of the Korean name. He directed The Chaser, which is probably a more enjoyable kind of dark film about a cop and a serial killer. This one is about a gambler and a kind of thoroughly unpleasant guy who, to kind of find his wife, does certain things. The main character is not likeable in any way, shape or form, but there is a kind of grim compulsion to kind of find out what happens to him. It's not an easy film. Again, it's not an enjoyable film particularly, but it is worth watching, if that makes any sense. Next is Young Frankenstein. Again, probably not going to make the final list of my favourite films of all time, but it's a worthy entry in the letter Y, apart from anything else for the horses every time they hear the word Frau Blucher, or Gene Wilder with the proper pronunciation of Frankenstein, or when he touches the violin and says still warm. Like all Mel Brooks films, it's not quite as great as Mel Brooks himself would say, but it's a lot of fun. Beautiful black and white cinematography, and it's certainly probably up there with Blazing Saddles for his best film. And finally, you'll be glad to hear, is Yojimbo from 1961. This is a Criterion Region A, spine number 52, which comes in the nice box with Sanjuro, which controversially is spine number 53. Yeah, Yojimbo. This is, I believe, probably the first Kurosawa film I saw, and I immediately fell in love with Kurosawa and Toshiro Mifune. It's a stunning film. It's probably a good Kurosawa film to start with, because it's kind of accessible. We in the West kind of recognise the tropes of what's going on. Obviously, I'd probably seen A Fistful of Dollars before I saw Yojimbo, but as much as I love Sergio Leone, Fistful of Dollars is probably my least favourite of his films, and it's probably the film of his that I revisit the least, because why bother if you've got Yojimbo? Walter Hill said after he'd remade Yojimbo as Last Man Standing with Bruce Willis and Christopher Walken, that only an idiot remakes Kurosawa. You can tell what I actually think of Last Man Standing with Christopher Walken when I don't actually have a copy of it. Yojimbo, from the start, when you see the dog carrying the severed hand, it's kind of like, okay, there's something going on here. The ravishing black and white cinematography, the use of widescreen. Again, Yojimbo probably isn't Kurosawa's greatest film. It's certainly one of them, as far as I'm concerned. But again, his shot composition, the people within the frame, and even just because of the architecture of like the pub, essentially, you even have a frame within frames. Toshiro Mifune, who pretty much joins this adventure and gets involved in this adventure pretty much because he's bored. It's one of the earliest performances that kind of appreciated the physical part of an actor's performance, the way he shrugs his shoulders in tune with the music, the way he's constantly scratching himself. He is the quintessential scruffy Ronin, something that I kind of aspire to. Again, Mifune and Yojimbo, to me, there's a kind of coolness score, if you like. So Clint Eastwood in the Dollars trilogy is cool, but is he Yojimbo cool? No. A modern example would be Keanu Reeves in John Wick. He's pretty cool, but is he Yojimbo cool? No. There's just something about the character of Yojimbo, the bodyguard, the fact that he does things and is motivated by things that we're not used to seeing in cinema. He doesn't do it for the love of a woman. He doesn't do it for money. Yes, he gets money during the film, but he's not that bothered about it. It's just something to do, which I think is fairly unique, and again opened my eyes. So again, you could argue, one of the criticisms of Kurosawa is the fact he's too westernized. He's not as Japanese as Mizoguchi and Ozu or Kobayashi. But Kurosawa and certainly Yojimbo in this example, it was a gateway for me into Japanese cinema. And I may have got into Japanese cinema at some point. I probably would have. But Yojimbo will always be special because it is that gateway into just the greatest cinema and the most diverse cinematic language and cinematic country that you'll ever see. If you've never seen a Japanese film, Yojimbo's a pretty good place to start, and the fact that it's kind of westernized, we understand the story of a goodie, even though he's not particularly morally good, fighting against two groups of bad men and playing them against each other. It rattles along, it's got a great score. Kurosawa for me is the governor. Kurosawa's shot composition for me is better than Kubrick and better than Orson Welles and better than Sergio Leone. You literally can pause the frame of just about any Kurosawa film, print it, stick it in a canvas and stick it in an art gallery. His shot composition, the relationship between characters in the frame to each other, for me it's jaw-dropping. And Yojimbo had that effect on me for however many years ago I saw it first. With films, you kind of, same with great albums, you sometimes wish you could go back and see them or hear them for the first time and kind of bottle that feeling. Pretty much like Strange Days with Ray Fiennes. If you could somehow bottle that, because Yojimbo was just one of those films that just blew me away and also blew my eyes wide open as well. So that's my final entry, which will make my final list of favourite films, because it's just rough and rambunctious and rowdy, and the ending's fantastic, and Mifune is just quintessential cool. So thanks very much for watching this fairly short letter Y video. Again, please leave your comments below for your Ys and why you like your Ys, and join me for the letter Z or even Z. and then I will announce what the next interactive series will be, which hopefully you'll enjoy that and interact with that one too. So this is Solitude Ronan saying have a good evening and farewell.